Deebo Samuel has been traded. The dangerous Deebo Samuel has found a new home alongside Jayden Daniels in Washington. This live stream, I'm going to break down Deebo to the Commanders, what it means for the 49ers future, what it means for the Washington Commanders in 2025 and beyond, their prospects of being a true contender next season. How do the Niners go about replacing Deebo Samuel's production? And how will the Commanders utilize the rare skill set that is Deebo Samuel? So join me in this live stream to discuss whether you're a Niners fan, whether you're a Commanders fan, whether you're just an NFL fan, guys. Let me know in the chat what you guys think of Deebo to the Commanders. What does this mean for the Commanders moving forward? Do you think that Deebo still has enough left in the tank to take this team to the next level? Do you think that this loss will really, truly be a big one for the 49ers? Or do you think this is actually a good thing for the 49ers? Because I think I could sell it in both ways, and I will in this video. Shout out to the people in the chat already. We got my man Singh. We've got AK in the chat. Singh says he really thought it was going to be the Dolphins that made the move for Deebo. That would have been fun. There's a connection there, but there was also a connection in Washington, which we broke down in our landing spots for Deebo Samuel. The two most likely scenarios were connections to Deebo Samuel, right? Washington and the Houston Texans. And the team that had that management connection was the Washington Commanders, right? Peters, being a former 49er front office member, knows Deebo Samuel's game intimately, right? He can map it out. He can tell Cliff Kingsbury how he would fit in his offense. They obviously know the personality. And Deebo, at his best, he's a dog. And you know Dan Quinn likes dogs on his football team. So Deebo Samuel has officially been dealt to the Washington Commanders for a 5th round selection. Yes, just a 5th round pick. When I was mapping out the trades for Deebo Samuel, I was thinking a 4th rounder would be about what it would take for Deebo, right? And I think that ultimately ended up being the case. Like around a 4th round, a 5th round pick. Now, I actually expected it to happen after the draft. I'm kind of shocked that the 49ers were able to pull this off now. Why? Because there were big salary cap implications. But as we're learning, we have learned that Washington is going to take on the remainder of Deebo Samuel's contract, and that is going to pay Deebo his full $17.5 million salary of the 2025 season. So the Niners are not worried about Deebo Samuel's contract at all, which is why it was only a 5th round pick. So if you're wondering why was it only a 5th rounder, that's why. The Niners, they relieved their books, right? They would have had a lot of money to pay that wide receiver that last season was no longer living up to his contract. That last season, most recently, was not playing at that same Deebo Samuel standard, okay? And what San Francisco paid him to be, which was one of the most dynamic playmakers in football. That being said, a change in location is potentially good for Deebo. A chance for redemption, a chance for a chip on his shoulder has always served Deebo Samuel well. Every single time he plays his best, it's in a bounce back situation. So I think this is kind of a win-win for both teams when I outline it, because I think he's a perfect fit for the Commanders' offense. And I also think that he no longer suited what the Niners wanted to be on offense. And I think that was indicated by last season. I don't think he is fully washed, as some people are saying in the chat. And thank you guys for joining the chat. We're going to discuss a lot of your questions. So if you guys have questions, very open format here. We're going to talk it out. We're going to discuss everything. But I'm just kind of rattling off everything that comes to my head. To me, I think that Deebo Samuel fits the Commanders really well. And the reason I would say that is because did you guys watch the Commanders offense? I mean, the amount of screens, the amount of RPOs, the amount of quick passes that are involved in Jayden Daniels and Cliff Kingsbury's attack in Washington is perfect for Deebo Samuel. And what was the type of receiver that the Commanders really truly needed in this offense, right? A lot of people were like, oh, they're going to go get T. Higgins because they need another awesome wide receiver. But if you're really looking at their depth chart and thinking, okay, what could they really use? It's a player that's a demon with the ball in his hands that can play from the slot and the inside of the formation. And that's Deebo Samuel, right? And then you add the layer of Deebo having the crafty versatility to be able to play wide receiver, to be able to play running back, to be able to hand him the ball, right? To be able to throw him screens and get cheap yardage. That is still where Deebo Samuel is at his best. I mean, if we're looking deeper into his numbers last year, like this was his worst season of his career, in my opinion. He graded as the 53rd best receiver, according to Pro Football Focus, if that matters to you. And the reason I bring that up is because his grades previously were 21st, 3rd, 29th, and 12th. So he's never been that bad throughout the course of his career, okay? Also, his yards per route run went down significantly where he didn't even rank in the top 50 last season, okay? Though when you look deeper into his numbers, he still was one of the best receivers in football after the catch, okay? He was the 4th best receiver in the NFL yak per reception, okay? So that's 8.2 yak per reception, which was 4th in the league, only behind Turpin, who's a punt returner, Marvin Mims, who was actually 1st, and Jamison Williams, who's might be the fastest player in the league, or one of them, okay? So, yeah, Deebo Samuel, not much of a contested target guy. So what you're looking for here is it's not a contested target guy. He's not going to be winning down the field. He's a guy that's going to win with physicality. He's going to win by getting the ball in his hands. He's going to win by making people miss. He's going to win by just the underneath stuff. And the thing that makes him a good fit for the Commanders on top of his layer of after the catch ability is that the Commanders face a lot of zone coverage. Because Jayden Daniels is such a dynamic threat with his legs, it's hard to play a lot of man against their receivers. Like if you watch the 49ers the last season, a lot of teams started to replicate the Chiefs' game plan. Let's get up in the face of these receivers, especially when Brandon Ayuk was out, right? Let's press them. Let's be physical. Let's play man a lot because that will allow us to put more numbers in the box against the run, and that will make Brock Purdy hold the ball, and that's where we can get after this offensive line and, press that issue. But with Deebo, he has never been effective as a separator or a route runner in the NFL. He's never been terrible. I think he's a little bit underrated in that regard, especially at the short to intermediate level. But he's always been at his best when Shanahan's been able to scheme him up touches, when he's been able to get him open through scheme, and then allow the athlete of Deebo Samuel to play in space, right? And that's what I think is really going to be effective for the Washington Commanders, all right? Let's get to the chat real quick, just after my initial thoughts right there. So I like the fit. I think this was the best fit on paper for Deebo Samuel among all of the potential trade candidates. The Texans, the Patriots, the Steelers, the whoever you had on that list, right? The Chargers. Barnes says Deebo needed a new home. He got one now. Yes, I think he did need a new home. He definitely wanted a new home. I think the Niners, when we flip the conversation of the Niners, why did they want to make this move? Well, they've got a lot of potential free agents that they want to sign, right? As Faithful says in the chat. He says, quit crying about just a 5th. Kittle, Greenlaw, Hufanga, Lenore are all 5th round picks. But, to layer onto that conversation, they want to re-sign Dre Greenlaw. They want to re-sign Hufanga, right? They want to be able to address their offensive line. They want to be able to address their defensive line. They got rid of Javon Hargrave. Maybe they'll go after Milton Williams or a Diggy Zua or somebody like that. Or maybe they want to go out and trade for Myles Garrett. Or maybe they want to go out and sign a defensive end or something. But when you look at their depth chart, right, they drafted Ricky Pearsall. Ricky Pearsall is talented. I think at the late last season, I liked him a lot coming out of the draft. Late last season, he showcased his talent, specifically from the slot, right? So Deebo and Pearsall had too much of an overlapping game. I think where Ricky is better than Deebo is that route running savvy. Like, I think that's the evolution of what Shanahan's looking for from that position. And Deebo is that yak demon, right? So that's kind of, I think, what they're trying to shift here. Also, Deebo is 29. He's getting towards 30. And he's the type of player where he's basically a running back, right, guys? So, like, his best assets are like a running back, like his ability to take on contact and things like that, where those things start to wear and tear towards your 30s, right? So, 5th round pick, I'm not surprised by the compensation. Anyone that's surprised by the compensation rather wasn't really watching Deebo last year, doesn't really understand the contract dynamics. But like I said, guys, if you're wondering about the contract, you know, the Commanders are going to take on the full $17.5 million deal, which is the last year of the deal for Deebo Samuel in 2025. Okay. Deebo also has dealt with injuries, although I feel like he's been mostly healthy. Like, he's played most of the games, right? He's a guy that sometimes plays injured, but he's playing. You know what I'm saying? So last season, at 28 years old, he played 15 games. He had 51 catches for 670 yards, 3 touchdowns. I actually attended the game that I think he played the best in the entire season. It was in Seattle. He had a long, game-breaking touchdown. Still looked like the old Deebo Samuel in that game. Had, I believe, a really awesome game against Miami later in the season. But through the middle of the season, we also got to remember this is a guy that had pneumonia. He was dealing with some things last year. Like, I think people maybe overlook that to a certain degree. Like, that can really wear on you, especially a player like Deebo, where so much of his game is that energy and that fierce attitude, and not being able to have that same like cardio is a big deal, in my opinion. So that's another factor, just throwing that out there, that I kind of just thought of. Mont2472 says, so basically Adams has flipped Dotson into Lattimore and Deebo. I'll take it. Is that really what happened? I don't know. That's a pretty good deal, in my opinion. Deebo about to cook, says Tex Mac. I definitely think you could see Deebo with like 80 plus catches this year. Like, I think he's going to get a lot of volume. Like, if you're a PPR fantasy player, I could see him getting a lot of volume because I think there's going to be a lot of layups for him in this offense. I think they're going to design a lot of screens, a lot of touches for him. And I think that's the perfect kind of complement to Terry McLaurin, because McLaurin is their number one. He's their alpha. He was one of the best receivers in football this year. They were in the same draft class, if I'm not mistaken. McLaurin is the more natural wide receiver, right? Like, he can play outside, he can win down the field, he can separate, he can beat man, he can beat zone, he can win contested, although that's not the biggest area of his game, it's speed. But I feel like McLaurin is that natural number one where you have to have a safety over the top, you have to put your number one corner on him. Deebo is that dynamic shift where it's like, okay, if you're altering your strategy to cover Terry, then you've got to deal with all the Deebo plays, all the Deebo offense, right? And that's where defenses are going to have to start to kind of like shift their attention. So now you've got to deal with Deebo at wide receiver, Deebo at running back, Jayden Daniels running, and then all the other things that are going on there. So I really like the fit within the Commander offense for sure. When it comes to the Niners, I feel like George Kittle is still an absolute beast. I thought he was the best tight end in football last year. Brandon Ayuk hopefully gets healthy. I feel like Brandon Ayuk will be a top 20 receiver next year once he's fully healthy. I'm not worried about that. I feel like Ricky Pearsall could have a huge breakout season. And they have Jawan Jennings, who was their best receiver last year. Like, Jawan Jennings is very, very underrated. And he's a guy that does everything well, in my opinion. Not super fast, but very, very good contested-wise, very smart wide receiver. So they have 3 good receivers. It's not like they're really losing that much in Deebo. I mean, it's a dynamic player that was amazing for them in the past. That was extremely valuable. Like I brought up before in previous videos, like Deebo might have been the most valuable playmaker in the entire NFL at one point. Like his versatility, his dynamic nature. But, you look at the Niners depth chart and it's like, they're not going to really, if those guys are healthy, they'll be fine. I'm not like, and then McCaffrey out of the backfield. So to me, it's not a huge deal. Harper, I'm not in charge of the updates, bro. Quest says also no bonus for Deebo, which was to be paid in about 8 to 9 million. Niners know what they are doing. Yes, I think they wouldn't have made this trade unless the team that was getting Deebo was willing to take on the money, right? Like I said at the beginning, I was genuinely shocked and surprised that, okay, Deebo is going to get traded now. Like, that doesn't make a lot of sense that Deebo Samuel would get traded before the draft unless like the contract shifts to the other team. Because especially with the compensation, like a 5th round pick, maybe if it was like a 3rd and they sort of figured out the money, maybe that would make more sense. The Niners need some O-line now. I definitely think they'll address the O-line. I think they need to address, well, Banks is a free agent. They brought back Barch, who's more of like a backup, but they need to fix their interior, in my opinion. They got Dominic Pooney, but I feel like left guard and center need to be addressed the most. I kind of think McKivitz is okay. I know a lot of Niners fans don't like McKivitz, but I feel like if you have one kind of below average player, that's fine. But I think they need a center, and I think they need a left guard for sure. Defensive tackle Jonathan Allen was part of the trade discussion between the Commanders and the Niners this week. So that's something to throw out there as they executed the Deebo Samuel deal. Ultimately, he was not included. Allen is due 16.4. That would have been pretty crazy if it was an Allen for Deebo trade. And Jonathan Allen, I'm a huge fan of. Whoever gets Jonathan Allen is going to get an absolute stud. I'm excited to see where he ends up. For sure. That would have been a pretty good deal, in my opinion, for the Niners as well. But obviously, $16 million is a lot to take on in a trade, too. And I think a big reason that the Niners wanted to do this is to get Deebo off the books, like to completely eliminate him and kind of start fresh with the rest of their roster, right? Washington will extend Deebo. That's very likely. Yes, very likely. Mr. Harper wants T. Higgins. I guess it could be, it's possible, but honestly, if I'm the Niners, bro, I don't think they need a receiver. Like, if Ayuk comes back and he's Ayuk, I'm not worried about wide receiver. Like, Jawan Jennings is a genuine dog of a player. Like, Ricky Pearsall, I believe in. George Kittle's getting a little older. Christian McCaffrey getting a little older, but those guys are great in the passing game. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like maybe they could use, Cowing they drafted, I think. He's got some speed. They could use maybe a little bit of a vertical dimension, but I feel like if they could build the O-line, continue to go with Kyle with his run game, the run game's first and foremost for them, and then build your D-line and your O-line and build the trenches back up. Like, that's what this team was missing last year. Yeah, Pearsall's probably wide receiver 3, but by the end of the year, I feel like he could be, wide receiver 2. I think he is really talented. I think Ayuk is a wide receiver 1. There's no doubt about it. It's just kind of the injury thing that's kind of over, hanging over his head. Devontae Adams, that's possible. If he doesn't, I think Devontae Adams would be like the most likely candidate if he were to be cut. But also you got to think about if Aaron Rodgers returns, that Devontae Adams would probably going to that team. But I could see Devontae going to the Niners for sure. I think he would be a great fit. Cooper Kupp, I don't think so unless he gets cut. He's definitely not going to get traded to the Niners. That's not happening. The Rams are not going to do that, right? Some more information on Deebo. Like I said, 53rd wide receiver grade last season. The year before, 12th in 2023. He had 424 snaps to out wide, 193 in the slot, 60 in the backfield. Last season, running the football, he had 42 carries for 136 yards. His yards per touch was the lowest of his career, which is something to note, at 8.7. 11.5 the previous season. 2022, he did have a similar season, to 2024, but he dealt with injuries. If you guys are looking at that, so if you're a Washington fan and you're wondering, can he bounce back? Very possible, because you look at 2022 when he was 26 and now he's 29. If you look at 2022, he had 56 catches. This year he had 51. 2022, he had 632 yards in 12 games, right? This is less games, okay? But still similar numbers. 632 yards. This year he had 670. He had 2 touchdowns in 2022, 3 this year. And then rushing wise, he did have 232 and 3 in 2022 compared to 136 and 1 this year. But the yards per touch was similar, where in 2022, he had 8.8. 2024, he had 8.7. So I feel like he is capable of a bounce back. I could even see it where Deebo actually plays like really well this year, and then maybe like in a year or two he falls off. I could also see that. That tends to happen a little bit with these type of moves too. At least Washington now has 3 receivers on the books. Yeah, they were also desperate for a wide receiver if you were really looking at their depth chart, because De'Ami Brown, who actually was really good by the end of the year, who I liked, I liked when he came out of the draft a few years ago, and he kind of just disappeared, and then all of a sudden he popped up. But he's a guy I think they'd like to keep, especially as a number 3. I think that would be awesome. But Luke McCaffrey is there. I don't know if they view Luke McCaffrey as a starter, though. I think he's still a bit of a development player. They have Zacchaeus, Brown, Noah. Okay, both Browns as free agents. Jamison Crowder and KJ Osborne are all free agents. Okay, so they needed another receiver, obviously. So now they've got Terry, they've got Deebo, they've got McCaffrey. I feel like they could re-sign Brown, and that would be a nice wide receiver group. Yeah, Kittle is a great blocker. Absolutely. Arguably the best blocker at tight end in the NFL. FN fan says, I'm a diehard Niner fan, but is it crazy to want to trade CMC? I think so, because I think right now you're probably not going to get the most. And I also feel like CMC is going to be fully healthy by the beginning of the year. He's already healthy right now. So I would be excited for McCaffrey this next year. I think he's got a couple years left. The thing with Christian is, and I know that running backs tend to fall off near this stage of their career, but he's a different type of athlete. Like, he's just the way he takes care of his body, all that sort of stuff. Like, he is a special player. Like, he's a Hall of Famer. So I would not be willing to trade McCaffrey. I just think he's too valuable. When he plays at his best, he's so good. He's such a good receiver. He's good at blocking. He's good at running. Like, he does everything, So I wouldn't trade him. Somebody brought up Amari Cooper in the chat. Amari Cooper would be nice, says Faithful. I kind of like that too. But if it were on like a 1-year deal for like, 10, whatever, 6 to 10 million, or like something relatively cheap, he'll probably get more somewhere else. But just throwing that out there, I actually would like Amari Cooper in this offense. I think he would bring a little bit of that downfield element, but he has fallen off just slightly. His speed, I don't think, is quite the same as it used to be. Sleeve. Guys, by the way, if you don't know, man, as you guys can see, my brand there in the bottom corner over, I don't know which direction, right there is the Bottom Line View. If you guys want to subscribe on YouTube, I cover the Niners, the Commanders, all 32 NFL teams. I'm also on the NFL daily shows for Bleacher Report twice a week. And during March, I'm going to be covering a lot of the NFL free agency stuff. So if you want to follow on the BR app, that's also a good idea if you like what you're hearing from me or you like me at all. So make sure to follow here on the app. Should Washington improve their O-line or their defense? I think their O-line is good. I wouldn't be worried about their O-line. I don't think it's amazing, but they've got all their starters returning. Wiley, Cosme, Biadish, Allegretti, and Coleman. Coleman being a 3rd-round pick from last year, so he'll develop. I think Tyler Biadish was a great signing for them. And then I think it really should be defense. Like, they'll probably bring back or try to bring back Bobby Wagner, but the Raiders might try to snatch him up. I wouldn't be shocked by that, but I think they'll try to bring back Bobby Wagner. I think you've got a good linebacker in Frankie Louvu there. I think they need to work on nickel corner is definitely something they should upgrade. They do have Lattimore, but he kind of fell off pretty big time late last season. Hopefully he can bounce back. The young corner they picked out of Michigan last year played pretty well near the end of the year. Their safeties, I liked Jeremy Chin in their defense, personally. Their safeties aren't the best, though. I don't think they're the worst. I think they need an edge rusher. Like, they need like a big-time edge rusher. Those are hard to find, though. I mean, unless you draft them. Like, maybe they go after DeMarcus Lawrence. That would make sense. Dante Fowler played well for them. He's a free agent. Jonathan Allen's going to get traded, though, so that's going to dictate a lot of what happens. But I think they should spend a majority of their resources on defense. I would try to build that defense up because I think, getting to the NFC Championship was great for them last year. It's not going to happen again if their defense is as bad as it was last year. It's just not going to happen. Like, it's got to be better than it was last year. Okay. That's a stupid idea, Quest for 6. You want arguably the best play caller in the NFL to give up his play calling? That's dumb. Sleeve says, Shanny gonna run more 2 tight end personnel. Yeah, it's hard to find Gronk and Hernandez, though. I will say that as a Patriots fan. It's hard to find those guys. We've been trying to do that for years. The Patriots have been trying to do that for years, man. It's just hard to find 2 players that are Hall of Famers at the same time, at the same position, that play totally different. I mean, we'll see. We'll see what the Niners end up doing. But 2 tight ends is a good idea, though. I think that they could sign a tight end or something like that, but we'll see what happens. For the Niners, I'm really interested in the Niners offseason. I've kind of adopted them as my NFC team. They're my sister's favorite team. So I'm really interested in their offseason. I feel like they're going to focus most of their attention on the line of scrimmage. Like I said, I think the D line is going to be a big point of emphasis. I think they'd love to have Greenlaw back, and I like D Winters as their 3rd linebacker. So I think their linebackers will be set. We'll see if they bring back Hufanga or maybe they sign some other safety. I wouldn't be shocked by that either. I think that Green was a great draft pick. Mustafa was a great draft pick. They had a really good draft last year. They could use another corner, so look out for that. But like I said, I think interior O-line and D-line is probably going to be where they spend most of their money this offseason. They got quite a bit of money now, feels like. Faithful says, for what I read, Lynch wants to go younger. That's probably why they didn't take Allen. Oh, that makes sense, I guess. Yeah, I mean, they are like the oldest team in the league, aren't they? Or one of them. I do think they will re-sign both players, Singh. Most likely. I think they will re-sign. I actually really liked how Greenlaw and Hufanga looked when they came back last year, despite kind of their limitations. Especially Greenlaw, considering he was coming off an Achilles. I know that he kind of was going in and out of the lineup, but I felt like when he came back, he was really good for them, despite the Achilles. So that's promising. And he'll also probably be pretty cheap because of the Achilles. Think they could trade up, have multiple 5th-round picks. Who are you guys talking about? I mean, it's blue. You guys struggled a lot because of injuries, I think, more than anything else. I don't think it had specifically to do with just your tight end position. All right. What else do I got to say about this? I was kind of surprised that Deebo got dealt now. Like, I broke down the landing spots for Deebo a day or 2 ago. Yesterday, actually, I think. And I was basically pitching that he would get traded after the draft because of the contract. It's funny, though. People are like, just a reminder that Jerry Jones gave up a 4th-round pick for Jonathan Mingo and Deebo Samuel went for a 5th-round pick. But again, people don't really understand how cap works. If you're a Patriots fan for some reason watching this, the Patriots were not in on Deebo Samuel, apparently. And I know I'm really hoping that we get a receiver because we've needed one for years. The Niners now have 11 picks in the draft. They have the 11th pick in the draft, which will be interesting to see where they go with that pick. Offensive line, defensive line. 2nd round, they've got 43. Then they've got 2/3, 3/4, a 5th, which they just received, a 6th, and 2 7ths. So the Niners got a lot of capital in this draft. And they've got the type of roster where if they hit on some of these picks, they could be back in the Super Bowl. It wouldn't be that surprising. For fantasy people, Ricky Pearsall to the moon is kind of what the report has been. For the Commanders, prospects this year, I'm excited. I just think it's going to be hard to replicate their run at the end of the year that they had. Like, they're still the second best team in their division because the Eagles are obviously the best, but they should be looked at as a wild card team entering the playoffs. And then given that Jayden Daniels by the end of the year was like the best quarterback in that conference, you've got a chance at the end of the day. The question will be if they can replicate the magic. Can they improve their defense to help Jayden Daniels out? But now it feels like they've got another playmaker on offense that's going to make their offense that much more difficult to stop. I think they should really be looking back at Zach Ertz to bring him back, De'Ami Brown, bring him back. Maybe try to improve the O-line subtly if they can, but I don't think it's a huge issue. But defense would be my point of emphasis for sure. Could the Niners make a serious run for Garrett? I think so. Yeah. I think they would be one of the teams that would try. Yeah, Garrett and Bozo would be crazy. That would be one of the best combinations of all time. I don't think I'm exaggerating. That would probably be one of the best edge duos in NFL history. Draft Tyler Warren for San Francisco. It replaces this fullback immediately by shifting to 21 personnel. It's a long-term George Kittle replacement. That's an interesting idea, but I kind of feel like that's more of a luxury pick than it is an essential. Like, I feel like they more so need offensive line or defensive line help. I do like that player a lot, though, but I guess it kind of depends what's on the board. Do you think a team would eat Ayuk's contract? I don't think Ayuk's getting traded. I only think one of them was getting traded. Sully says Deebo won't need to play running back anymore. He could. I mean, that's part of what made him valuable at his peak, right? Was his ability to play running back, was his ability to play wide receiver, was his wide back mantra, right? So he'll probably get some touches at running back, but I wouldn't expect him to line up at running back too much. I think he'll be most exclusively a slot receiver. The Commanders don't run a ton of 2 wide receiver, 2 tight end formation. They're not much of an under center team. They're very much a spread team. They love their wide receivers, right? So Deebo will probably be playing in the slot a ton and maybe a little bit in 2 wide receiver packages, but I would actually, like Deebo is somewhat of a better player when he gets not playing every snap, like he's such an explosive player. He's not one of those guys that is like an every play player. Like, you'd rather have him kind of like taking a few plays off than you get him out there and then he's exploding, making a play, something like that. He's more of an explosive guy rather than a cardio guy, if that makes sense. Subconscious says, what's up, man? Faithful says, how does 31 million dead cap hit affect salary cap with Washington paying his salary? I don't think we've heard about that exactly, so I don't know if I can report that to you because I don't have those details. But from what I've seen, they're taking the contract. That's what I've seen. I think that would eliminate any sort of dead cap, but I could be wrong. I don't know exactly. Deebo also gets to face the Eagles twice a year, and he hates the Eagles, so there's that. If anyone remembers that. Deebo is due $21.7 million this year. Now heads to join. Okay, yeah, that's Ian Rappaport. I don't really see. I'm gonna look this up for you guys. Yeah, $21 million cap hit. 2021 Deebo, one of the best, most fun players, most unique players. Okay, in the Deebo trade, this is from David Lombardi, 49er beat reporter. In Deebo Samuel trade, 49ers save and Commanders acquire 1.17 base salary, 15.4 option bonus, 750K total per game roster bonus, 200 workout bonus, and 17.5 total savings for the 49ers. At least for this year. But yeah. All right. I think that's all I really got. Thank you guys so much for watching. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Deebo joins Jayden Daniels in Washington. I'm excited. I know you're excited. Thanks for watching. It's Mitch. We'll see you next time. Peace, guys.